here so I have it for YouTube, and then I'm going to shoot it over to Facebook.
It's a good idea.
Do you have Facebook? I never.
No.
Why is that?
I don't know, David. It just wasn't. I didn't want to be a part of that cult.
Of all the people, so I actually saw that you had I was looking for you, and I saw that you had a page, but the last time anything's been posted on it was in 2015.
Exactly.
Oh.
I never posted anything. Me and my wife were anti-social media for a long time. Just was. I don't know why.
Well, all right then.
Now the world's changing, and so I got to have a Facebook page, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like you should have a Facebook page, but I understand why you would not want one as well.
True.
Okay, we just went live. So
awesome.
The whole world can now see us.
I love it.
Here we are.
Here we are.
I'm with Pastor Mathew Cork. He's been a lead pastor since 2003 at Yorba Linda Friends Church. He has brought the church through several crisis moments, and here we are again in a worldwide pandemic.
That's right.
Nationwide quarantine. How you doing? How you doing with it?
Dave, I am doing well, thank you. You know, they tell me that I'm essential to the needs of the community. So I've been able to work. So that's been really great. So I'm doing good. Thanks for asking.
You are essential. What are some of those essential duties you're doing in quarantine?
I don't know. I'm trying to take care of my family. That's one thing I'm doing. 3 kids. Everybody's home from college. So
right.
That's a little chaotic. But I think, you know, for me, leading this church and organization, that's a huge task because we had to shift pretty quickly. Luckily, we were prepared in lots of ways, unprepared in some, but we've been learning and growing. And so I think that's been one of the fun things in the midst of craziness and some pain and struggle. There's just been some great things that have come out of it for us, I think, as a church as a whole, but for us at Friends Church as well. So
yeah. So you got all your kids away to college, and then here they are all returning home.
Beautiful thing. I'm paying for them to live at college, and they are all living at home. So I'm paying for them in 2 places right now, and it makes absolutely no sense. But I guess that's the part of having college students in the midst of a pandemic. So
are you saying the colleges didn't like give some of that back?
Well, let's just talk about that if we could for a minute, Dave.
Let's do it.
The one college that my son goes to, Point Loma Nazarene University, he chose to live off campus this year. So when something like this comes along, it's not like the landlord goes, oh, yes, we'll forgive the college student. So we're paying for rent through the end of his lease, which I think is up at the end of May. And then my daughter is getting something back. We still don't know what, but she went to Belmont University, and they've said she's getting some housing, but I'm going to guess that they're just going to put it towards next year, which is fine. Just don't know what that is yet. But all of her stuff's still in her dorm room. She hasn't moved anything out of Nashville. So we have to figure out how we're going to get to Nashville here in a few weeks and get all of her stuff. So, yeah.
And did they both go into online schooling?
Well, it's an online schooling, and I think that's working out well. It's interesting. You got a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old, and it's like, okay, are mom and dad going to be mom and dad again? Because they've been out on their own.
Right.
Trying to balance that and let them be grown-up adults, but yet they're in our house. It's been an interesting journey. They've handled it great. I don't know that we've handled it so great, but we're learning in that.
That is fascinating. Right at the cusp of freedom, here they are all back at home again.
Well, I don't know if you remember, at 21, I thought I knew everything. So yeah. I had a lot of answers.
Yeah.
And my kids are pretty great. I love them to death. But it is an interesting dynamic. But they've handled it well, and I hope they would say we have too. But it's been a little bit of a dance for sure.
You think they will kind of like the online stuff and want to stay home, or they?
No. And I think we are fine with that as well. You kind of get used to it. It was really tough when they left, but I think now we are kind of like, okay, we're used to our house only having one child. We have one daughter still in high school.
Right.
So that's been kind of nice. And I do love having them home, but I think it's going to be okay. I think they'll be ready to go once August rolls around again. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're all right with that.
Well, we have a few people watching now, which is awesome. Feel free to ask questions. If you don't know, Pastor Mathew is a lead pastor of a megachurch. And what do you do when a megachurch, all of a sudden, no one can show up? How have you navigated that?
Well, one of my gifts, I believe God kind of gave me is I have always loved to try and make a large church small, or at least feel small. And so I think that was one of the things we just dove into. The first thing was I said, we have to stay connected to our people. So I don't know, we have like 12,000, 13,000 people in our database, but it was just from the very beginning, I said, let's connect. I want us calling everybody. I want us to make sure every person in our church database has had a call within those first 2-3 weeks. And so we did that. We created a script. We deployed staff, and we just started trying to connect with every person. And then we started trying to connect in all of our social media platforms pretty much every week. So we created a new devotional series. We have 4 different campuses if you include our Amigos congregation. So our pastors are communicating at least 3 times a week with their congregations or their campus. And so what we did was say, let's communicate in a consistent and I would say concise manner to stay connected with them, and then get them connected to the reason that we still serve God in this season, the reason that we have hope amidst the pandemic, and try to be hope-filled and encouraging. So I think for us, it was, let's make the big church small, which we have greater opportunity to do. And it wasn't just going to be on weekends. It was going to be throughout the week. And then weekends come together as one body. We're trying to unify our congregations and all of our campuses. So we made a really strong effort and push to say, hey, we're going to have just consistent voice and consistent worship for all of our campuses with one service on the weekends. So that's what we did. And that's kind of where we headed from the very beginning.
So in that, when you have 4 campuses, 1 in Orange, 1 in Anaheim, and 1 with Amigos,
yeah.
If you become one, is there any loss in the Orange, Anaheim, and those kind of communities?
Of course. I think there's loss that you have to look at. I think for us, your pastors that are pastors there, we have a unique model. We don't do video teaching very often. We do it sometimes, but we have live teaching at every campus. And yet for this season, we just felt like, hey, we want one person teaching to all people right now. And that was there was a number of reasons I chose to do that, but that was one of the things. You're going to have to give up something on the weekends if you're a pastor of Orange or a pastor of Anaheim, and you're going to have to come under the umbrella of Friends. And so that was part of the give and take. But part of the give and take we've always had is we're in this together. And we've always chosen team over individuals. And we've always been about the vision rather than the personality or the person. And so I think in this season, that's had to really be at the forefront. What are we about? What do we value? And then that came through on our weekend services. And I try my best to include and to help our campuses be involved in multiple ways. But yeah, there's not enough space and places for that to go around, opportunities to go around right now in this season. So got to be strategic in that.
Yeah, totally. What's been like the coolest moment in the midst of this? Even in doing that, have you seen growth or people make life changes that might not have, or even something in those campus situations? What's been like wow, I'm amazed. I'm glad this happened. I mean, Obviously we're not glad the pandemic happened and the quarantine, and we do recognize all the loss and all the death and the horrible part of this. But switching gears to a good news interview, what's some cool moments that you've seen so far?
Well, I would say the opportunity we have to share the gospel with more and more people. So our attendance probably has tripled, if not quadrupled, online. In fact, Palm Sunday, it probably went from where we would gather with 5,000 people on a weekend to over 22,000 people that were apart, something like that.
Wow.
So that's huge. I would say in the last 2 weeks, about over 140 people have made a decision for Jesus Christ.
And
so Palm Sunday.
What's normal on that?
Excuse me?
What's the normal rate of that?
It's hard to say, but I would say if we did it in-house, you'd probably be at 17 to 20 people. So we were averaging 70 to 75 in each weekend.
Wow.
And so I think that's gone up, but I think our creativity's gone up. I always think, man, as far as staff, when something takes you out of the norm, it's good. When someone shocks the system in some ways, you have to think on your feet. And I always love people that, I want to hire people that solve problems. And you had to solve problems quickly, and you had to change things and make things work. And not only have they solved problems, they've become more creative in this season and have produced something that I think has grabbed the hearts and the minds of people, at least on our weekend services.
Yeah, they have been amazing to watch and to see all that creativity for sure. How do you think this will change the future of the church? What's some of the stuff you think might be different moving forward?
Well, I do think now one of the great things for us is we were ahead kind of online. I had asked a year ago for elders to really put some investment in what we were doing online. We still have room to grow and things we want to do, but we were in a position in a great way. So I think that's helpful, but I don't think it's going away. I think it's going to become more prominent. I don't know how quickly this thing's going to come back, but I can tell you this. As a large church, we're probably going to be last. If there's a rollout, they're not going to be gathering people of 500 or more together. I think that won't be one of the first things that comes back. So we got to look and say, I think this, as far as live streaming and church online, it's going to be here for a long time. Not just when we come back, not just before we come back, but when we come back. And I think now churches need to look and say, this is really our main campus. It's the main way people will look at a church and now try and discover, do they want to be a part of a church? I think it was part of it before. Now I don't think there's any doubt.
Right.
That's a great thing. I could think one of the worries, people are going to get in a habit and they're going to like being at home and watching church. And so then you go, all right, are they ever going to come back? And I don't know what the answer is, but I think we got to realize this is not something that's going away. And we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I would definitely say, someone's trying to call me, so sorry about that. I would definitely say that it was already sort of the brochure of the church. People would check out online first before they wanted to ever come in the doors. But now it's like they want to experience church before they ever come in the doors. So it's not only just seeing a service, it's all, okay, now how would I connect and what would be my accountability group and it's like a whole nother level. And then I guess the question is, will they show up after this is all over?
Well, some people are like, I can't wait till we get back together. It's going to be awesome. And people are going to be so excited. And I'm like, I don't know that they are. I think they're going to be, it could be the first service when I come back and I preach to everybody in masks. I mean, think about that. I mean, it's going to be awkward. And I don't know that everybody's just going to all of a sudden come back. I'm preparing the other way. I'm preparing that they're not.
Right.
And I think it's going to be a slow progression to where we see the church, as far as coming together, grow again. I think we are going to have to say, okay, online is our future. Does that mean it's not going to happen in-house and in this building that I'm sitting in right now? No, it is. But man, we have better put some resources and opportunity for the future in what we're doing right now and be ready. Because I think that's going to be one of the greatest ways we communicate with the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true. I even talking about like Disneyland, I think that a lot of people are talking about when is it going to open? When is it going to open? But even if it opens, we've already been talking, my family, we've been once or twice in our life. And
once or twice a week.
And we're like, even if it opens, I'm not going to be running back to those doors, not until there's a vaccine. And that's literally what my wife said. We will probably go back when they have a vaccine, because then if I get sick, I know that that could be a year. We don't really know what that means.
Yeah, don't know what that means. And I know there's people that are different on the spectrum than me. I've told people, you have to help me out because I don't worry about very much. I literally take what the Bible says. Don't worry about tomorrow. My wife would tell you it kind of drives her a little nuts. I just don't worry about that many things.
Yeah.
So I had to even have our staff bring me to kind of the middle ground because I don't worry too much. And yet I look and I say, I know there are people that do. and they're going to be cautious. And I think some of that is okay. I think for us as a church, I have to be careful in my personality not to get frustrated or upset as crowds as they take, or the church, as it takes a little while for us to get back to what might be normal. I don't know that it will. And so I'm just looking and going, hey, let's make our investments now. Let's start making plans that online is going to be the only thing we're going to do.
Yeah.
So how are we going to make that the very best experience we can? And now it's not just, all right, let's get through this crisis and let's give them great weekends. Now we're like, let's connect. How are we connecting with people? How are we building relationships with people? How are we getting new guests connected to our church, even virtually?
Yeah.
Those conversations are happening. And I think we're going to be much better off when we do come back together. But I just think our priorities are going to change pretty significantly.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. I love just the forward thinking. And I also failed to mention that you are the superintendent of the Friends denomination. So in that role, as the leader of over 40 churches, how are you pushing all of them to wake up to this new world that we live in? What's kind of what's the driving sort of message there? Or some ways that you're connecting with these churches?
Well, I think for me, first of all, it was just trying to be a calm, hope-filled leader. And so I think, honestly, David, that's what I've done, because some of these churches didn't have the resources or have not put themselves in a position to even be online or have a presence online. And so helping them try and get to that next spot where they realize that's going to be really something important, not just for today, but for the future. And to get them to even think differently. That's why on one end, as sad as this is and as hard as it is, there are some new awakenings that are happening. And I think people are coming to grips with the church and the way it's run for the last 100 years probably isn't going to run that way anymore. And if you do, you're going to miss out on a lot. And there's going to be a lot of things that you will be able, not be able to do to minister to the world that we live in. And so I think for me, it's giving them hope right now, but also trying to give them tools to take next steps, trying to give them resources, trying to connect them to everything that could help them wherever they're at to get to a next step. I'm always about taking next steps. Hey, just get a next step. Where are you at today? You can look online and you don't want to try and compete. You don't want to try and be somebody you're not. One of the great things about right now is, I mean, if you watch The Tonight Show or you watch Conan O'Brien, everything's at home. It's kind of unscripted. I mean, Jimmy Fallon's using his kids to hold cue cards and to do things. And so there's this unprofessionalism that kind of comes across, and it's really appealing. Will that last forever? I don't know. I don't think so.
Right.
But yeah, I think you can go as a church, this is what we got, and we're going to do it to the best of our ability. And as you grow, I'm just trying to help them take a next step. Keep taking a next step. You are in the perfect position to learn and grow, and for people to be forgiving and accommodating.
Yeah.
And it's only going to help them, I think. I fear that some people will go, oh, once this is over, okay, we can go back to what we did and only what we did. And I think that's probably going to be a mistake. So I'm trying to help pastors think differently. Don't act like you're going back to normal, because it's not going to be what it was.
Absolutely. And it was already shifting, especially in the way that I would say, disciple, evangelize, and assimilate. So, you know, the way people were connecting to the church was already shifting pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
What would you say that is? Like, what's the world we're going to live in, as it already was shifting, that the church has to be moving towards?
Well, I think one of the great things for this season, and I'll answer that with this, is those people that are late adopters to church changing, they were forced. It just was forced upon them. Yeah. And now they might still feel behind, but they're in it. And they have to be in it.
10 years.
Survive. Yeah. And some people, it's taken a long, long time. So I look and I say, for us, I think this virtual connection, I think even first-time connections with people is going to be done by Zoom, is going to be done in ways we could never imagine. I think they're going to want to meet pastors or leaders before they even come to the facility. I think they would look and say, all right, I want to connect with a group. Like, we're getting ready to do Alpha, and some other things to help people kind of who are questioning God and what's going on. And we're doing it through Zoom.
Right.
And I just think that's going to be part of the next steps. I think, honestly, our pastors are going to have face-to-face conversations like this with people before they ever come into church. And so I think we still are going to be able to connect with the world. I think now, honestly, I think people are going to want to connect with us throughout the week. And I think the Sunday church is going to be an expression, or the Saturday night service is going to be an expression of what we do, but they're going to be used to now seeing us, whether that's a devotional, whether that's a small group. We're going to be used to seeing us as pastors throughout the week. And we have to look and say, how are we connecting with our people Monday through Friday, not just on Saturday and Sunday at a worship service? That's going to be one thing in the totality of what we as a church did before. And I think it used to be the one thing we lived for. Everything else was just extra.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now the extra has become the normal. And I think the church service, when they actually come, might be the extra. I think it's going to flip.
I agree. I really think the Sunday when we get together, or the Saturday night, it's going to be a big celebration and we're all going to love it. But the actual ministry and what we do is Monday through Friday. Like that's the way it really should have been all along. But somehow, like, we're awakening to it.
Yeah.
So,
and then we go, what's important right now? There's things that we're just not going to do anymore. Sorry for those of us at our church that are watching. I'm not giving anything away. I don't know what those are, but I'm one of my gifts is the futurist, so I'm futuristic. So I'm not sitting here thinking about today.
Yeah.
I've been thinking, what are we doing in 2 years from now? Where are we doing 5 years from now? I got to get ahead of our church in all of that. And I just look and I say, some of the things we've done for a long time are invested money in. Those things probably aren't coming back to life because there's things that we're doing in the community right now. There's things that we're actually being the Acts 2 church and caring for the sick and the poor and anybody who has need that we haven't done as well as we should have done. And I think our team has done an exceptional job of connecting to our community and the people that are hurting. And I look at what's going on right now and I'm like, I don't want that to go away. But for that to stay solid and strong, some other things just have to go away. And we have to make sure that we're actually, our mission is what we're about. And it's not all the extra stuff that we've done as a really large church for a really long time.
Yeah. And I want to push into that knowing you can't answer that. But like, I'm kind of loving this. Like tomorrow, my interview is with a missionary in Chile who I'm just so excited to talk to him. And I don't know why we haven't talked in 5 years. It's like, and on Thursday, it's a missionary from Africa who I'm so excited to reconnect with. And I just thought, what were we waiting for? Like, why all of a sudden now I'm like, hey, I could talk to anybody and we can talk ministry right now. The heck were we doing before? Yeah. So what's the stuff we need to drop? And I don't want you to tell me who you're going to fire. What's the stuff as a church that we have to be like, all right, this needs to shift and we all need to get on like this new move forward. You know what I mean? I
do. And, I think that does scare some people, but if they've been with me long enough, I've been here almost 30 years. So people on staff are kind of used to me. They're kind of used to change. They're kind of used to me saying, look, man, you need to figure out who's going to take over your job, or you need to figure out how you're giving your ministry away. And I think you're absolutely right. We were waiting, or we were doing all the church things, and we weren't really connecting with people. And I think even as I sat on Zoom last night, there was a group of us that were there. My son turned 21 yesterday. So
congrats.
There was some great families in his life and some people that had impacted him. And the reason I love him as my son, but I think he's a good young man, is because those people helped raise him. So we all sat on a Zoom call and I looked and there was this community that happened that we didn't need to come together from Nashville and other places. We wouldn't have done it.
Right.
And I had 25 people on there that got to tell Nolan how amazing of a young man he was and what impacted them about him. What has he done that impacted their lives? And I'm like, I got to sit there and watch this and I went, okay, this was the church. All of them at some point were at our church and they influenced Nolan, and it was the church. And they got to sit there and invest again in my 21-year-old son and say, this is why we love Nolan. And this is why we think Nolan's going to change the world. And I went, I don't know that I would have gotten that because all of them wouldn't have been at a party. But
Right.
we had a party, and it was more, I think, impactful for Nolan than it would have been to just come to the house and eat cake, because I don't know that we would have done what we did.
Exactly.
If that makes any sense. And I think that's the people part.
Yeah. So, okay. And yeah, I totally get where you're going. You're doing it in an abstract way, but I totally, I love it. So having said that, I'll kind of end with this. What's one part you can't wait to get back? So all this stuff that's so good, but I can't wait to have this one thing back.
For me, I'm an extrovert and I'm a people person. And I can honestly say when I sit in our worship center and I worship with God's people, it's pretty amazing. And there are services that are different than other services, but there's just a power of God's presence when God's people come together. Mm. Can I feel that in my home? Sure. But let's be honest, I'm not as engaged. We're not completely focused. I really missed that. I think I missed it on Easter more than I thought I would when I walked into the empty building. And then I walked out knowing I wasn't doing like 7 services on the weekend. There was a part of me that went, this sucks. Yeah. And yet there's a part of me on Sunday morning when I had breakfast with my family for the first time in 30 years. I was like, This is cool. But I missed that. And it wasn't getting up and speaking in front of people. I enjoy that, but I don't live for that hour. If I live for that hour, that becomes more about me than it does about, I think, the church. I miss seeing the people and worshiping with them. So I can't wait till that happens and I get to experience that again as the body of Christ.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I'm having the same dilemma where I'm like, I love this. And I also, especially like children's ministry, that I tried doing it with the kids on Sunday and I'm like, this isn't working. It doesn't work online very well. And worship, we don't all stand up and hold hands and darken the room. It's just like, I always used to say the reason church is such a big deal on the weekend is it's that one time where you use your spiritual gift, which I think that's shifting, which I love. But it's also that time that you get to worship as one body. And the only time you really experience that and understand what I'm talking about is maybe at a big game, huge game where you're singing the national anthem together. And you have sort of this like feeling inside, which we don't even have that anymore, but that feeling inside of that you cannot replicate what that feels like. No. That's what worship is as well in a group of people on a Sunday morning or Saturday night. And that is a loss. That is a loss.
That's probably why I'm watching concerts on YouTube or, on TV, because I'll go back and I'll go, I want to experience something. Like I went and watched a couple Coldplay. If you know me, that's surprising, I know. But a couple Coldplay concerts because I was like, I wanted to experience that. Yeah. And it was just awesome. But it was the gathering of people, and it was like a worship experience. I miss our people. Our church, we have just amazing people. And so being here for 30 years, I think that's part of it too. I can't wait to see them, to worship with them, and to be that community.
You ever watch a concert in a VR?
No, I haven't yet.
You gotta try it.
If I try that, then I think that'll probably be the next phase for the church as well.
Yeah, we'll all be sitting. We can see everyone in our VR heads. That's not a bad idea. That'd be.
Well, you know what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to get them to get clips for one of our services coming up that go on the screen. Like this week, we had a virtual choir for Easter.
Which was amazing.
That was pretty cool. I want to have a virtual worship. I want them to have the crowd on the screens. Like when we worship together here at church. What is that like? And can you replicate that? Can somehow in the middle of the song, you see other people worshiping? Yeah. And so I'm like, I want you to get that sense, that feel that people are worshiping with you. And whether it's old footage or whatever it is, but when our room worships, what is that like? And can you experience that at home? So I've asked them to start trying to figure that out. I don't know if we can, but we're going to try and we'll see if it works, because I know I just miss it.
Yeah. Yeah. That virtual choir was the first time I felt chills while
Right.
watching on TV, because on TV, like worship is just not the same. And so really what I'm enjoying is the creative elements that they're doing. And I'm like, this is really cool. But that was a moment where I was like, oh, I finally can feel it again. And that was different.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping he actually posts that separately out. And I want to see it again. That was so cool.
Yeah, they did a great job.
Anyway, all right, man. You are on the leading cusp of this thing, and keep at it. Awesome. Anything final words you want to say to anyone watching in this time, in this crazy time that we're living?
I don't know. I just always say God's up to something. Can you not see it? You know, I use Isaiah 43:18. Hey, forget the past. God's up to something new. Can't you just see it? He's making way in the wasteland. He's making streams in the wilderness. He's doing something. And I just want to be a part of that. There's something new happening. And the church, I think, has the greatest opportunity it's ever had. And so I can always look at the negative and see the positive. I just believe God's up to something. And I want people not to miss that. And I think now, last thing is, this is your opportunity to try things. This is your chance to take some risks, and you're going to be okay, and you're going to get away with some things that you might not have in the past. Take them, try them, wherever you're at, and see what God does and how he uses you. That's in any relationships, not just for church people. That's in anything. Just, you know, whether it's sitting down and talking to a neighbor, well, you can't really sit down with them, but I've driven by and now I've talked to a couple of neighbors that I've never talked to.
Right.
I found out my neighbor works for NASA. I mean, he worked for NASA, and he told me his whole career and what he did, and he helped a space shuttle go up into orbit, and the guy that went on the moon. And I'm like, I had no idea, but I stopped because I had time to talk to him.
Yeah. That's
and
good.
That was there was great insight that I would have never had because I'm too busy. And so I think that's part of it. God's doing something new. Can't you see it? It's what the scripture says. Can't you see it? It's right in front of you.
I love it.
So slow down and see it.
You're awesome. Really appreciate you, praying for you. And
thanks, David.
I feel like I don't work with you. we actually work together.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Oh, hold on a second. I'm going to stop the live and then we'll talk to you.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. I think everything